don't know what's going to happen with this Ohtani stuff. Listen, if they connect Shohei Ohtani to having gambled on baseball or having gambled illegally, Shohei's going to have to go away for a while, because as hard as the paint as Major League Baseball has gone in their anti-gambling for the players stance, if Shohei broke a gambling rule, you are too invested, even if he is the most popular and, yes, valuable franchise player on planet Earth right now, period, end of discussion. He's got to go away. And I know he's only a DH, and I know the Dodgers have guys on that roster that can step into that DH spot and still be pretty good, but it's less about that. And it's more about the international caliber distraction that story becomes. And even with a bunch of professionals like Freeman and Mookie Betts, you still got to wonder, they're going to be talked about and asked constantly. And at some point, it may have that impact. So I'm not saying that the Braves should definitively have shorter odds to win the NL East than the Dodgers do to the NL West. But to say the Dodgers are that much of a runaway favorite and the Braves aren't does not make a lick of sense to me. If you want to bet the Dodgers to win the division, just take that money and put it on the Braves, because it's just as much a lock and you're only giving half the juice back.
You bring up a good point about the Dodgers and maybe the distractions that all this Ohtani stuff is going to bring. Are you thinking about doing anything with the Dodgers from like a day-to-day standpoint? Like, are you going to bet all of these teams on the run line against them? We know the Dodgers are going to be favorites in every game that they play in. Are you going to bet all these other teams on the run line? Are you going to maybe fade Ohtani? Are you going to bet him to strike out maybe once or twice a game? Like, does he seem the kind of player to you where maybe this thing could wear on him? Do you think it could wear on his teammates? Like, I mean, I think it's a fair point you bring up, Rob. And, you know, distractions are certainly a part of sports, and some teams handle it better than others. Some players and athletes handle it better than others. Do you think this could be maybe an angle to fade the Dodgers early on in the season, or do you think that this is something that's not going to affect?
I don't think I'm going to fade the Dodgers for the same reason that I said earlier. If the Braves lose a player or two, I'm still not going to fade them, because they're still going to be really, really good. The Braves and the Dodgers have the 1A and 1B best lineups in Major League Baseball. Either one of those teams could lose anybody out of that lineup and still be really, really good. Here's the Rob loves to overthink things theory that I'm working with right now. The deeper this goes, this Ohtani story, the more it feels to me, and again, I could be reading into it. Let me start by saying crystal clear, I'm a Shohei Ohtani stan, okay? I've had a bro crush on this guy for years now. I have been his biggest advocate to get him the hell away from the toxicity that is the LA Angels as a whole, as a fan base, as a franchise, as an ownership group. Cody Decker and I have been petitioning for 2 years now to get Shohei Ohtani up out of LA. I didn't want him in the other LA, but I also think baseball will be better when Shohei Ohtani is a routine playoff appearer. Here's my interesting thing. The more this story goes on, even as a stan, the more it kind of feels like Shohei Ohtani kind of has a manufactured image, right? Like, I'm kind of getting Russell Wilson vibes out of it. It feels like a lot of it's manufactured by people that aren't Shohei Ohtani, and that Shohei just kind of lets it go. And why not? It's built a brand that is worth at least $700 million, and that's before we put his endorsements and his international endorsements in the pot. My dude is the first sports billionaire. Even if the individual paycheck doesn't show up, when everything is gathered together, Shohei Ohtani will be a billionaire, assuming nothing goes squirrely and he doesn't get banned for life. So if I am right and that image is a little manufactured, that image is a little plastic, then a lot of the attention of Shohei Ohtani, PJ, has to go into protecting that image, like it has for Russell Wilson over the past 2 years. I think that's part of the reason Russell's slowed down. A lot of it goes into that image, and if you are having to spend time out of your day to do damage control, to protect the image, both nationally and internationally, right? Because Russell Wilson doesn't have to worry about what they think about in Japan, what they think about in China, what they think about in Malaysia and Korea. Shohei Ohtani does. He's got to manage a public image internationally. So don't tell me that's not going to take away from his time and his focus. I honestly don't have a problem maybe fading Shohei Ohtani's home run number, maybe going on the over with the strikeouts, because if this story, which is not losing steam, if anything, it's gaining steam when his camp says, yeah, we asked the authorities to investigate. We're not going to tell you which authorities. We're not going to tell you which agency's investigating. Well, then I can't really believe that you did that then, right? And if they are manufacturing his side of the story and not being open and honest and transparent about it, PJ, with an international image to protect, it does become a distraction, even for the greatest baseball player to have ever lived. I don't think it would be too far-fetched to maybe fade some Shohei Ohtani offensive numbers for this year and this year only. I think that being there in New York on that team can kind of create a more stabilized foundation for Juan Soto. He is my jump out favorite to be the MVP, but he's got Aaron Judge on that team. He's got Giancarlo Stanton on that team. He's got DJ LeMahieu on that team. That being said, Ronald Acuna Jr. won the MVP in the NL last year, and he was surrounded by all-stars too. Who's your thoughts as the favorite, if you got to give me 1, 2, 3 in the AL?
So, yeah, I would say I like your call on Juan Soto being number one. The fact that he is such a prodigious hitter, right? The things that this kid was doing at 19, 20 years old in the major leagues were just absolutely unprecedented. And now you're putting him in Yankee Stadium, which is an absolute paradise for left-handed hitters. He could potentially flirt with 50 home runs this season if he focuses really on, pulling the ball into that short porch. I think Soto is too good of a hitter that he will try to stay a little bit more balanced. He's not necessarily going to turn into like a better version of Curtis Granderson, who became like enamored with just hitting home runs. He's going to, continue to get his walks and get his hits, but certainly a power spike, I think, is very, very possible for him in this ballpark. I really like Yordan Alvarez. I think that for my money, he is a top 3 hitter in baseball. He plays for a really good team. The StatCast data just jumps off the page when you look at it. The only thing he has to do is stay healthy, right? He only played in 111 games last year, 130 something the year prior. If he can get to that 150 mark, I think he's got a chance to lead the league in homers, and that will certainly put him in the MVP mix. And then I will just give one more shout out to Bobby Witt Jr. The fact that he had 30 homers and 49 steals at 23 years old, like the sky is the absolute limit for this kid. The only thing that is going to hold him back is the Royals as a team. But if you think the Royals can be a little bit better than maybe their win total suggests, I think he is very live to finish in the top of those standings. So those are 3 guys that kind of catch my eye at the top of the leaderboard. I'm fading Aaron Judge. His injury history scares me. Julio Rodriguez is great, but I do worry about the Mariners a little bit as well. And I think that for the most part, you need to be on a playoff team if you're going to contend for this award.
You had another day to sleep on it, think about it. Any change of opinion on this Iowa State-Illinois game?
Not really. I mean, I got to tell you, of all the teams playing in the Sweet 16, I don't think that any team has elevated my opinion of them quite like Iowa State. I think this is a team that the more that I've paid attention to them, the more I've watched them through conference tournament play into the tournament, the more I really think when we talk about Houston, we should be mentioning Iowa State in the same breath. They are a copycat team, and there are some spots they may even be slightly better than Houston in the metrics. So I really like Iowa State, and I think they're going to put the clamps down on Illinois. Illinois is a good team, but Iowa State is that good. So no, I'm not changing off of that. I've thought about that game. I talked a little bit about that game on my show, the Rob Brown show, yesterday and today, and came with the same conclusion, even talking with listeners around here about how they filled out their bracket, that this team deserves to be mentioned in the same breath as UConn, as Houston, as the teams up in the top tier. And I think they're going to sit out to prove that against Illinois. I'm going to go, I would say to cover, and I'm going to go with the under, because I think this is a game that Iowa State will establish what it is, which is a purely stranglehold defensive team. I love the under in this game.
Yeah, Rob, I'm with you. I don't really love a side, but I do lean towards Iowa State. What I do love in the game is correlating a spread with the total. Like, this is the number one offense in college basketball with Illinois versus the number one defense in Iowa State. It should be pretty clear cut. If you like the Cyclones, you like the under, and if you like Illinois, you like the over. I will say the Illini this year have struggled a little bit against teams that can force turnovers. Iowa State's as good as that, doing that as anybody in the country. So it's going to be a great matchup. Illinois really has only been tested for kind of a half against Morehead State, who played him tough, and then they blew it open. Duquesne, I mean, you could tell right away in the first 2 minutes that Illinois was going to blow them out. So we'll see. The later that we get into the tournament, when we get to the second weekend, when we get to the Final Four, and all the teams are good and these matchups start to get really, really solid, it's when I tend to lean more so on the defensive team. So Iowa State's the best defense in the sport. I'm going to ride with them in this game, and I like the under as well. I'm with you there on 145.5.
This whole season, Clemson fans were telling me it's a referendum on Brad Brownell. Well, Brad Brownell's got this Clemson team playing pretty well, and interestingly enough, they did it with PJ Hall only getting 19 minutes out of 40 in that last game. If Clemson can win without PJ Hall playing half the game, and Brad Brownell can make the adjustments to protect him in this upcoming game, PJ and I both think we can go with money line upset for the Clemson Tigers. Where do you fall on that?
I think Clemson going to the Final Four. I said it pre-tournament.
Wow.
That game against New Mexico was the game for me. It was like last year, guys, I was on Florida Atlantic to the Final Four before the tournament started, and I said the game against Memphis is the big game. They get that game, they're going all the way. They were dominant against New Mexico. PJ Hall has not had the PJ Hall-like game yet, but you know what Clemson does? They play great interior defense. They're great on the boards. They make their free throws, and they don't turn the ball over. That's a lot of check marks here. And now you're facing an Arizona team that has Caleb Love as their top scorer, 205 more field goal attempts than any other player, and he shoots 41% from the field. So that's good. You have a poor, efficient shooter shooting 205 more shots than everybody else on the team. I love this Clemson team. I love the offensive sets they're running. Joe Girard has brought them consistency and good shooting. Chase Hunter to the moon. Shefflin, everyone underestimates, and only does get 8 rebounds a game. I love this Clemson team. I think they win this game. And remember, you know this, they won on the road at Alabama. They won on the road at North Carolina. They will not be intimidated by either team in the other bracket. I like the Tigers to go to the Final Four.
It's a great point on all of it, especially the fact that if they win that game, they've played both of those teams and they've won in Chapel Hill and in Tuscaloosa.